I hope we're all good. I hope we're all having a good week. Happy hump day. I must admit, I am struggling this morning. Very, very tired. Alarm went off and I was not interested in the slightest. But we power on and we power through anyway. There are a few things that we want to go through this morning. Firstly, I want to address the Euro pullbacks that we have seen. Obviously, Monday came and we saw the Euro continue its weakness that we had seen. We'd started to see pushes to the downside coming in from various areas and various pairs. Then obviously we've started to see a pullback occur. So EuroCAD and Eurodollar are the ones we're looking at in particular. EuroAus from yesterday is a rule upon itself because obviously we didn't see a particularly positive Australian speech last night, which obviously has led into this morning. But there are a few pullbacks occurring that we need to be mindful of and need to be very wary of. But we're around key levels, so it gives us an opportunity more than it does anything else, which obviously as traders is what we are looking for. So like I said, to address EuroCAD first and foremost is where I want to be. With EuroCAD at the moment, obviously what we are seeing is we saw the break that came into play on Monday. Price obviously just sunk down, hit its consolidation, and has then since fired up to come back and find the previous support region at 150.50. That's absolutely fine. At the end of the day, when we get to a level like that in the market, so that 150.50 level, and that 150.50 region, when you come out onto the higher time frames, just pop a level through here, you can see quite how significant this area has been as support previously. So there is very little surprise that once we'd broken through that and come back to retest that level, that we are going to see price stall and we're going to see price want to retest that area. What we're essentially doing is trying to find an area of potential resistance at what was previous support. If we can see that, then obviously that move to the downside, those pushes into kind of 146, 145 are very, very likely to occur. If obviously we don't see those pushes and those pushes don't come, then we are in a completely different ball game altogether. Then obviously we would need to start thinking about potentially changing our outlook, potentially changing the bias that we hold and looking for potential upside movements. There is still considerable upside considering as the push to 152 is highly likely and highly logical. It would be completely illogical and irresponsible to rule that movement out, to rule that kind of potential when it's there staring at you in the face. There is so much potential surrounding the Canadian dollar in particular at the moment that obviously it would be very, very wise for us to just keep that in mind. Now, obviously, today we do see the Canadian interest rate decision. So, as always, when you kind of get into a situation like that, we're probably likely to see a lot of consolidation, potentially even a little bit of weakness coming to the Canadian dollar before that announcement. I think as is pretty standard, obviously, at the moment, we can't see anybody moving or making a move on raising potential rate decisions at the moment. In actual fact, I think What we're more likely to see and what we're more likely to come across is just the potential that what we see comes more from the press conference and the monetary policy that follows. But as we kind of move in and we're looking at the potential surrounding the Canadian dollar at the moment, the most part of that is going to come from probably seeing movements out of the back of that monetary policy. Now, surrounding obviously EuroCAD in particular, once we were to break up, or if we do see that break up to the upside, out of kind of, I would go as far to say as 150.80, then obviously we are going to need to turn our attentions to the probability that the long position holds more weight than the short. However, obviously below 50.40, I think we can be fairly confident and fairly comfortable with the potential to push back through to the downside. So taking that same kind of approach and taking that same bias, I'm not sure is the right word, but taking that same bias when we look towards EuroUSD, we're in obviously a similar situation, a similar kind of process. What we're looking and what we're potentially seeing when we go to EuroUSD is, again, we've seen that push down to 118.80 on Monday, down into 118.80. We saw that pull back, came back into 1920. Now, the reason that we have this 1920 area highlighted, and that is an area that we are being very, very mindful of, is because around that area we have seen time and time again a situation where buyers or sellers have come into the market and collected multiple orders throughout that region and throughout that zone. So what we're looking to see and what we're potentially looking for around that area is a similar thing to occur and a similar thing to happen. We want to see the potential for us to see buyers or sellers to come into the market around that same situation, and to see the potential, obviously, then for price to either bounce or to reject and go back to the upside. Either or is absolutely fine. Don't hold any real particular bias on the pair as things stand currently. Obviously, but we are going to get a move at some point either way. So we do just need to keep mindful and be fully aware of that situation. Given the momentum that we're seeing currently this morning is coming from the European Open. When London session opens, obviously we can probably expect to see the same thing. What I would very much expect to see is a push back into this 119.20 region, and then obviously from there we can kind of see where price may or may not head to. But a push back into that region currently makes all the sense in the world. A retest then of the Asian session highs before obviously seeing a potential push back down to the downside. 118.80 is still the level that is obviously of huge interest to us. Around that 118.80 level, obviously we are going to be able to see whether or not we are going to get that push back down. If that 1880 level comes in, then I would very much anticipate that we will start to see a push back into that 1620 region, into that 1620 level. If you come to the 4-hour time frame, we are, however, starting to see the potential for that engulfing pattern to form. So the breaks are back above 119.20 are going to be very, very important for the next leg of the pair. Above 119.20, you have to consider that 120 is probably the most likely scenario for the pair. So below 118.80 or above 119.20. Now, as I say, overnight we saw some not great news coming out with regards to the Aussie dollar. The press conference wasn't amazing, and we saw quite a Aussie sell-off as a result. What we're starting to see now is obviously the potential continuation for that. We'd started to see the Aussie dollar gain a little bit of strength as we got into this morning, and we're going to very much need to see how this European Open plays out. We are far, far, far from having confirmed opportunities. However, again, surrounding the Canadian dollar, there's so much potential. Aussie CAD below 197 should see a significant drop. So if we can get an entry around that 197 region, 197, 169.80, that kind of area, what we're very likely to see then is a push immediately back down to 96. I don't envision that that's going to hold very strong at all. And from there, obviously, we can look to target back down towards the lows at 194. Not 194, just at 94 or 94.20. However, again, like I say, most things are going to kind of come down to around about the London Open. So seeing how we progress as we move into around about 10 o'clock this morning. From there, obviously, we might get a better idea and a better picture of what is going on and where the potential lies. But for now, we need to be very mindful. I don't overly think with Aussie CAD there's much of a position until 198 goes. You want to get back above the support. But as far as short positions go, below 197 looks highly probable. Aussie yen, a similar situation. 83 is the key to any potential downside. As things stand, 84 is where we need to get above until 84 goes or is taken out, or at least 83.80, but when there's only 20 pips till that 84 level, you have to ask yourself whether or not that's even worth it. Below 83 whole number, you've got the potential for shorts down to 82 and at the bottom of there. Above 84, then back towards 85 is the most likely scenario there. EuroCAD around that 50-50 level we've covered. Pound CAD, obviously the pound isn't ready to give up its strength that it has seen of late. I do just want to move this level down ever so slightly, just because where it is currently is not immensely relevant to current price action, but it is far more relevant where it is there. So what we're seeing with the pound, and Pound New Zealand depicts it quite well as well, we've seen quite a shift in momentum as the European Open has come into play. I would imagine a very similar thing is about to happen when the London session opens. There has been very, very little data or information coming out surrounding the pound. It's been quite quiet. Therefore, it's just kind of been in the shadows doing its thing, slowly creeping higher and higher and higher. I think that comes down more to other currencies being particularly weak at certain points and certain times, as opposed to the pound being a powerhouse. That said, above 176.20, we do need to start considering the potential for those pound longs, considering as obviously we have missed the potential for that push up from 174.80. Below 75 or 75.20, I will be very, very interested to see how we react, as if we broke through that previous resistance and more recently support region, then I would very much anticipate falling off to 174.40, and then obviously from there, as we've discussed, there is a lot of potential then to drive a lot lower, down towards 173 and 172 as an eventual target, but we are a while off seeing those kind of numbers for the pair. I think the markets today are going to be quite slow and a little bit sideways and choppy until lunchtime when we see some data start to flow. Pound Swiss, we've come back, retested the area that we broke out from last week, from earlier in the week. We are now floating around this support region and looking to test that as resistance. If we can get the resistance away and a close back below 28.90, I am more than content to take the short position down to 28, potentially even lower than that. Also, if that was to happen, then Aussie Swiss is probably something that will come into play for us also, and the potential that we have seen over the last couple of weeks for Aussie Swiss to return back down to 169, that kind of region and realm. So potentially even lower, but as we stand at the moment, I think potential breaks back below previous swings. Certainly with Aussie Swiss below 71.30 is almost certainly going to lead to 70 as a whole number there. So Pound Swiss and Aussie Swiss are definitely setting up for potentials. However, obviously Pound Swiss above 92.20, you've then broken back into the support region. You have to consider at that point that longs up to 131 are highly probable. Euro dollar, as I say, we kind of covered a little bit. We need to get back below and stay below that 1880 level. But for all the time that we are trading below 119.20, I am more than content holding a bias towards potential downside movement. Gold, we didn't get the break that we wanted to yesterday, and we've obviously seen price just drive back to the upside throughout yesterday. A very, very profitable situation for those that were able to take advantage. I personally didn't. I think now the key comes into play anywhere around these previous highs. If we can get back above this previous area, get back above 1720, then there is comfortably 200 pips back to 1740 on the table. However, with that said, if the US dollar does strengthen back up today, I think we could expect to see price pop down to somewhere around about 116.90. So a break back below 17 could potentially draw us into positions, but the risk to reward isn't overly there as things stand at the moment. Like I say, 10 o'clock is going to be the real deciding factor. What happens between 10 and 10:30 will probably give us quite an indication of where price goes for the rest of today. Like I say, we are mostly just chilling out and waiting for the potential releases that come out, and obviously the data that is due surrounding the Canadian dollar. There is also US CPI figures out this afternoon as well. So when we couple the CPI for the US dollar and the Canadian interest rate decision, and obviously subsequent press release, we are coupling together there with a potentially very volatile situation. As we move through this afternoon, the markets are just clearly waiting for that to occur. Then obviously into Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, we've got the Euros turn. So we have high impact data coming in. That high impact data is probably then going likely to transpire into the charts and what we see. So I would imagine around about the US Open, we will start to see some pretty significant moves that we should be able to catch some momentum on. As things stand though, like I say, we have potentials. We just need to be patient surrounding the Opens. This kind of a situation where we just see straight buying pressure always kind of concerns me. A similar situation when we just see selling pressure to the downside. typically they are nothing more than unchallenged, in which case we tend to see pretty quick snapbacks occur. The Canadian dollar looks far more appealing than the US dollar does at the moment. So yeah, that's kind of all we need to go through this morning. Just be very mindful. EuroUSD below 1880. All the time we're under 1920. Happy days. If we go back above 1920, attention has to be turned to 120. EuroCAD above 150.80, then you have to turn your attention to 152. Aussie CAD, if we can break back below 97, happy days. If we get above 98, then we have to turn our attention to the longs back to 99.40. Aussie Yen above 84 to 85. Until we break the whole number, I'm not content looking at shorts. Pound Swiss 128.80 holds all the keys at the moment. Obviously with Pound CAD also, we want to get below 75.20 before we take a position there. Euro USD we've just covered. Gold above 17.20, might look for longs. Below 17, we'll turn attention to shorts. Pound New Zealand is something that does interest me. We keep kind of creeping a little bit, but we've obviously seen a vast amount of buy orders for the pound coming on European Open. And there's a good chance that carries through into the London Open also. Whatever you're up to, have a good day. Remember to be extremely safe and cautious surrounding lunchtime today, when we have obviously the rate decisions and US CPI figures. But apart from that, it should be pretty smooth sailing through this morning. We just need to see where this liquidity lies once the London session opens. But be sensible, be safe, have a good day, and I'll catch up with you.